They call me James. I am the guy who said no to protective custody. Most people thought I was crazy for it. Almost no one refuses the safety of living apart from the men they testified against. But I never saw myself as a coward. I knew one thing for sure. Living in a cage surrounded by those men would not make me disappear. It would make me stronger. It would make me figure out the truth. I am serving time for a crime I did not fully commit, at least not the way the newspapers said it. They said I was involved in a robbery that went wrong. A simple story. A man robs a store, things turn deadly. But the truth is tangled with a group of men from my neighborhood. Men I knew, men I trusted. I saw the plan before it happened. I was there, but I was not part of the crime. When the cops arrested me, I made a deal. Testify against those men or rot behind bars with no hope. Did it. I named names, gave dates, told stories. The kind of stories that break men or build grudges that never die. When I walked into that courtroom, I was fighting for my freedom, but also walking into a lion's den. So when they offered me protective custody, a chance to live apart from those men inside prison, I said no. I wanted to face them. I wanted to see who would show their true face when the walls closed in. I wanted to understand what really happened that night and who was hiding what. The prison was cold. Steel bars, harsh lights, and hard eyes. I was assigned to Cell Block D, right in the middle of the territory controlled by some of the men I testified against. The air was thick with tension, whispered threats, and sideways glances. Every day was a gamble. Every step could change everything. On my first night, a man called Malik came to my cell. He was tall, scarred, with eyes that burned like fire. He looked at me like I was a ghost. "You are the snitch," he said, his voice low but sharp. "You do not belong here." I looked back. "Maybe," I said, "but I am here, and I am not going anywhere." Malik laughed a cold sound. "We will see." That night, I lay awake thinking, the mystery was not just about who did what that night of the robbery. It was about why I was the one who ended up in here, about who really pulled the strings, about secrets buried deeper than the prison walls. The days after that first night passed in a strange mix of tension and quiet. Everyone watched me and tested me. Some stayed silent. Others tried to intimidate. But no one made a move outright. I learned early that fear is the currency in this place. It's not strength. It's not muscle. Fear. The men I testified against were experts at spending it. Malik became a strange sort of shadow in my life. He was the one who approached me first, but then he would disappear for days, only to come back with a smirk or a stare that never quite met mine. I knew he was watching for any sign of weakness. I could not show any. One afternoon during yard time, I saw Malik speaking quietly with a man I had never seen before. The man was older, quiet, with a missing tooth and a look that suggested he had seen too many winters in here. They exchanged a folded piece of paper. Malik looked at me and said nothing, but his eyes said plenty. I pocketed the image in my mind. That piece of paper was a secret waiting to be uncovered. I wondered what it could mean. The mystery I was living was not just about me or the robbery anymore. It was about this hidden communication, about who was truly running things inside these walls and why. Late one night, I heard a faint knocking on my cell bars. It was Malik again. "James," he whispered, "come outside. I have something to show you." My heart hammered. Was this a trap or a chance? I waited, listening. The guard's footsteps echoed down the corridor, then faded. I slipped out quietly and followed Malik into a shadowed corner of the block. He pulled out the folded paper from his jacket. "This," he said, "is part of a message we intercepted. You might think I hate you. Maybe I do. But there's something bigger going on, something that neither of us fully understand." I took the paper, unfolding it carefully. The writing was strange, coded maybe, but a few words stood out. "The plan changes and the real target is close." I looked at Malik, eyes wide. "What real target?" I asked. He shook his head. "That is what we need to find out together." The next days felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Malik and I did not speak openly about the message, but we watched and listened more closely than ever. I realized the prison was more than a place for punishment. It was a chessboard, and every man was a piece in a game I barely understood. Rumors started to swirl about a new plan, something that could change the balance of power inside the prison. Some said it was about control of the drug trade. Others whispered it was about a secret that would bring down powerful men both inside and outside these walls. One evening, I was alone in the rec yard when I noticed a small group gathered around a broken bench. They were talking in low voices, casting glances toward me. I could not hear what they said, but I caught a name that sent a chill through my spine. Marcus. Marcus was the man who had been the kingpin before the robbery, the one I had testified against. I had not seen him since the trial, and I thought he was locked away in solitary. If he was back, it meant trouble. I approached carefully. One of the men spotted me and snarled, "Stay out of this, snitch." I raised my hands. "I am not here to fight. Just want to talk." To my surprise, one of them stepped forward. It was Malik. "We need to be smart about this," he said. "Marcus is not just a threat. He is a key to the bigger mystery." I nodded slowly. "What do you know?" Malik looked around and then whispered, "Marcus is planning something. Something that will shake this place to its core. It might have something to do with why you are really here." That was the first time I heard the real mystery spoken aloud. Why was I here? What was the truth behind the robbery and the men I testified against? And how did Marcus fit into it? I realized then that refusing protective custody was not just a gamble with my life. It was a chance to uncover the truth, no matter how dark or dangerous it was. The days grew colder, and the tension in the air was almost suffocating. Malik and I kept our conversations quiet, careful not to draw attention. Trust was a rare currency in this place, and I knew better than to waste it. But the mystery of Marcus and the message haunted my every thought. One afternoon, I managed to find a moment alone with Malik in the laundry room. The hum of machines and clatter of baskets masked our voices. "Tell me everything you know about Marcus," I whispered. Malik's eyes flickered with a mixture of fear and respect. Marcus was more than a kingpin. He controlled the whole neighborhood outside. Inside here, his influence runs deep. But after your testimony, he vanished. Some say he was moved, others say he went underground. Nobody knows for sure. I nodded slowly. This plan he is working on. Malik hesitated. It is supposed to hit the guards, the administration, maybe even people outside prison. Something big enough to shake everything. But the details are murky. That night, I lay on my cot, staring at the ceiling. Questions churned in my mind. Was Marcus really back? Was he planning a rebellion? And if so, what did it mean for me? I was a marked man, but maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to use this chaos to get answers. The next morning, during breakfast, I noticed a slip of paper under my tray. My heart skipped a beat. I glanced around, but no one met my eyes. I unfolded it carefully. The note read, "Meet at the old workshop tonight, alone. Come if you want the truth." I felt a cold thrill run through me. This was no coincidence. The mysteries were closing in. That night, as the prison settled into uneasy quiet, I made my way to the old workshop. It was a place no one used anymore, a forgotten corner near the back of the prison yard. The walls were cracked and the windows barred, but inside, shadows moved. I waited. Minutes passed like hours. Then a figure stepped out of the darkness. It was Marcus. Older than I remembered, but the same cold fire burned in his eyes. "You came," he said simply. "I want to know what is really going on," I replied. Marcus studied me for a long moment. "If Guts, James. Not many would come here after what you did, but maybe that is why I need to talk to you." He pulled out a small envelope and handed it to me. Inside were photos and documents. Names I recognized, faces I had seen in court, but also some I did not. As Marcus said, is proof that the robbery was only part of a bigger scheme. Someone wanted me out of the way, but they are still pulling the strings. I believe some guards are involved, maybe even people on the outside. I felt a chill. The mystery was deeper than I imagined. My testimony had shaken things, but it had also put me in the middle of a storm I did not fully understand. Marcus looked at me sharply. "If you want to survive here, you will need allies, but you will need to be smarter than anyone else." I nodded. "I am ready." As I left the workshop, the weight of the secret in my pocket felt heavy. The prison was no longer just a place to serve time. It was a battlefield for truth and survival. The following days were tense as I tried to piece together the information Marcus had given me. The photos showed meetings in hidden rooms, people exchanging envelopes, whispers caught in blurry images. It was clear that what I thought was just a robbery was part of a larger conspiracy. I had to find out who the real masterminds were. Malik stayed close, though he was cautious. We both knew the risks. If anyone found out what we were doing, it could mean disaster. Still, there was no turning back. Truth was too important. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation between two guards near the mess hall. They were talking about increased security measures and new transfers coming in. One mentioned something about a package being smuggled in. My heart raced. Could this be connected to the plan Marcus warned about? I decided to investigate. That night, I moved carefully through the shadows, heading toward the area where packages arrived. The yard was empty except for a few night guards. I spotted a figure unloading a crate. It was a guard I recognized, one who rarely spoke, but always watched closely. I stepped forward, my voice low, but firm. "What is in the crate?" He froze, then smirked. "Mind your own business, James." I did not back down. "This is my business if it affects everyone here." He laughed quietly. "You think you know more than you do. Be careful who you trust." Before I could respond, he slipped away into the darkness. I was left with more questions than answers. The mystery was growing, and so was the danger. The next few days were a blur of careful observation and quiet conversations. Malik and I shared what little we could without drawing attention. The prison felt like a pressure cooker, ready to explode at any moment. I could sense that the plan Marcus warned about was coming closer to unfolding. One evening, as I returned to my cell, I noticed a small package slipped under the door. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Inside was a note and a small key. The note read, "Trust no one. The truth lies where the shadows meet the light." I turned the key over in my hand, wondering what door it might open. My mind raced through the possibilities. Was this a trap or a lifeline? The next day, during work detail, I found myself near an old storage room that had been sealed for years. The lock looked rusted but intact. My heart pounded as I slid the key into the lock. To my surprise, it turned easily. The door creaked open to reveal a small, dark room filled with forgotten crates and dusty papers. Among the clutter, I found files with names, dates, and locations. Some were familiar, tied to the robbery and to other incidents I had never heard of. There were also photographs showing meetings between prison officials and some of the inmates. It was clear someone had been running things from the shadows for a long time. As I studied the files, a voice whispered behind me, "Looking for answers, James?" I spun around to see Malik standing in the doorway, his eyes serious. "You found what I hoped you would," he said. Together, we realized the mystery was bigger than either of us imagined. This was no ordinary prison drama. It was a web of corruption and secrets stretching far beyond these walls. Malik and I spent the next several nights poring over the documents in the storage room. Each file revealed a new piece of the puzzle. There were names of guards who were clearly involved in illegal dealings. There were hints of bribes, cover-ups, and even plans to silence certain inmates who knew too much. One name kept appearing again and again. It was someone I never expected. The warden himself. The idea seemed impossible at first. The man who was supposed to keep order was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. But the evidence was there, clear and damning. We realized that Marcus's plan was not just a rebellion, it was a desperate move to expose the corruption that had taken root at the very top. And somehow, my testimony had triggered a chain reaction that neither the prisoners nor the officials were fully prepared for. One night, Malik turned to me with a grim expression. "You need to be very careful from now on. The warden's reach is long, his eyes everywhere. If he suspects we have this information, he will come after us." I nodded, feeling the weight of the danger settling in. Then we have to act fast and smart. We need allies. But finding allies in a place like this was easier said than done. Trust was a rare commodity. One wrong move could mean the end. Still, I was determined. I had refused protective custody for a reason, to face the truth, no matter the cost. Finding allies in prison was like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. Everyone was cautious, watching their own backs. Still, Malik and I began to talk quietly to a few men we thought we could trust. Some had grudges against the warden. Others had their own reasons to want the truth to come out. Slowly, a fragile alliance formed. One of the men was Hector, a grizzled veteran with a reputation for fairness. He had been inside longer than most and knew how to survive without losing himself. Another was Luis, a younger inmate who had connections on the outside and a sharp mind for details. Together, we started to piece together the bigger picture. The warden was involved in smuggling contraband into the prison. He used the profits to maintain his power and silence anyone who dared to challenge him. The robbery I had been accused of was just a pawn in a larger game to get rid of Marcus, who threatened to expose everything. The deeper we dug, the more dangerous it became. There were whispered threats in the halls. My food was once tampered with, and I caught a guard watching me a little too closely. It was clear that someone was trying to scare me into silence. Thank you for watching this far. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you are enjoying it. One night, during a meeting in the yard, Marcus appeared suddenly. His presence was like a storm rolling in. He told us that the plan to expose the warden was ready to move forward. We would have to act quickly and decisively. The truth was coming, but so was the reckoning, and I was right in the middle of it. The night before the plan was set to unfold, the prison felt electric with anticipation and fear. Everyone who was part of the alliance gathered in secret corners, speaking in hushed tones. I could feel the weight of what was about to happen, pressing down on us all. The risk was enormous. If we failed, the consequences would be deadly. Malik stood beside me, his face serious. We are playing with fire, James. Once this starts, there's no turning back. I nodded, feeling the same mix of fear and determination. We have no choice. The corruption has to end. As the hours passed, we made our final preparations. Messages were passed quietly, and signals were agreed upon. The plan was to expose the warden during the morning inspection, when the prison officials would be gathered in the main hall. We had evidence, witnesses, and a carefully crafted story to tell. Morning came fast. Tension in the air was almost unbearable. As we were led to the hall, the warden stood at the front, confident and unaware of what was about to happen. I stepped forward first, holding the documents we had gathered. The room went silent. I began to speak, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. I told the story of the robbery, the cover-up, and the corruption that had poisoned the prison from the top down. One by one, others joined in, sharing their pieces of the truth. The warden's face twisted with anger and disbelief. Guards shifted uncomfortably, but the evidence was clear. There was no denying it. Suddenly alarms blared, the warden shouted orders, and chaos erupted. But we had already planted the seeds of change. The prisoners and some guards began demanding answers. The story was out. In that moment, I realized refusing protective custody was not just about survival. It was about standing up for truth, even when surrounded by the same men I once feared. The mystery was no longer just mine. It belonged to all of us. The chaos that erupted after the alarm sounded was like a wave crashing over everything. Guards shouted orders, trying to regain control, but the prisoners who had stood with us were louder. The truth had given us strength, a force that could not be silenced by threats or intimidation. The warden was quickly removed from the hall by his aides, his face pale and furious. Rumors spread that an investigation was already underway. For the first time in years, the prison felt like it might change. But change was slow, and the cost was high. Men who had helped expose the corruption faced brutal retaliation. Malik and I kept our heads down, knowing that survival was still a battle. In the following weeks, whispers of new leadership circulated. Some guards were replaced, and the prison administration promised reforms. Yet the atmosphere remained tense. Old alliances did not break easily, and some mysteries were far from solved. One night, I received another note slipped under my door. This one was different. It said, "The real danger is not the warden. Look deeper. Trust no one." The message chilled me. I realized the mystery I had uncovered was only the surface of a much larger story. There were forces at work inside and outside the prison, and I was caught in the middle. I looked around the cell block, at the men who once feared me and now seemed to watch with new respect. I had refused protective custody, choosing instead to face the danger head-on. That decision had led me into darkness, but also into a strange kind of light. The story was not over, it was only just beginning. The following days felt heavier, as if a new shadow had settled over the prison. Everyone seemed more guarded, watching their words and actions closely. The note's warning echoed in my mind. The real danger was deeper than the warden's corruption. But what could it be? Who else could hold such power behind the walls? Malik and I met in secret once more. We cannot trust anyone, not even those who helped us, he said quietly. There are puppeteers pulling strings we cannot see. I nodded. We need to find out who they are. We cannot fight what we do not understand. Our search took us to the oldest parts of the prison, places long forgotten by the administration. Rumors spoke of hidden meetings in underground tunnels, of secret deals made under the cover of darkness. We began to ask questions, listening carefully to the whispers among the inmates. One night, I overheard a conversation between two men I did not recognize. They spoke of shipments, money, and a man called the Broker. The Broker was a name I had never heard before, but it sent a shiver down my spine. Could this broker be the one controlling everything? Was he the true mastermind behind the corruption, the violence, and the mysteries that surrounded us? Yeah. Malik and I knew we had to find this man. It was the only way to unravel the truth and survive the storm that was coming. The search for the broker became an obsession. Malik and I moved cautiously, careful to avoid raising suspicion. The prison was full of eyes and ears. One wrong step, and everything could fall apart. We talked to anyone who might know something, piecing together fragments of stories that painted a shadowy picture of a man who controlled secrets and deals from the shadows. One evening, as I walked back from the mess hall, a hand grabbed my arm. It was Luis, the sharp young inmate with outside connections. His voice was low, but urgent. I heard something. The broker met with some guards last night in the basement of cell block. See it as a dangerous place. You want to check it out? I glanced at Malik, who nodded. We have no choice. That night, we slipped through dim corridors and avoided patrols until we reached the basement. The air was damp and thick, with the smell of rust and mold. We heard voices echoing faintly. Peeking around a corner, I saw a small group gathered. In the center was a man in a dark jacket, his face hidden by the hood of his sweatshirt. The others listened intently as he spoke. The shipment comes next week. We move fast. No mistakes. The warden will be out of the way soon, and then the real power shifts, the man said. I caught Malik's eye. This was it. The broker was real, and his reach was deeper than we had imagined. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked beneath my foot. The group snapped their heads toward our hiding spot. Malik and I had been discovered. The group's eyes locked onto us immediately. The man in the hood stepped forward slowly, his voice calm but filled with authority. You two have some nerve, sneaking around where you do not belong. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. We just want to know what is really happening. The truth needs to come out. The man laughed softly, a sound that sent a chill down my spine. Truth. Truth is a luxury in a place like this. You do not get to ask questions without paying a price. Malik tightened his fists beside me. We are not afraid. The man studied us for a moment, then nodded. Bravery can be useful. Maybe you are worth something after all. He motioned for the others to step back and spoke to us quietly. I am called the Broker. I control things behind the scenes. The warden was just a pawn in a larger game. Soon everything will change. I felt a mix of fear and curiosity. Why show yourself to us? The Broker smiled. Because you are different, James. You refused protective custody. You chose to face your enemies. That means something. Maybe you can be part of the next chapter. Before I could respond, footsteps echoed down the hallway. The group vanished into the shadows quickly. Malik and I exchanged a glance. The mystery had just deepened, and the danger was closer than ever. After the broker disappeared into the shadows, Malik and I stood frozen for a moment, our minds racing. The revelation hit harder than any blow. The warden had been only one piece of a much larger puzzle. Someone else was pulling strings from the shadows, shaping the fate of everyone inside. We knew we had to be even more careful now. The broker's world was dangerous and mysterious, and getting involved meant risking everything. But there was no turning back. I had refused protective custody to face this truth, and I was not about to walk away now. Over the next few days, Malik and I gathered what little information we could from whispers and hidden notes. The brokers seemed to have contacts everywhere. Guards, inmates, even some people outside the prison. His influence was vast and hard to trace. One night, Luis approached me with a grave expression. There is a shipment coming, just like the broker said. But this one is different. It's not just drugs or money. Something bigger. Weapons. My stomach tightened. If weapons were getting smuggled in, the prison was about to become a battlefield. We had to act fast. If the weapons reached the wrong hands, the chaos could spiral out of control. The mystery was no longer just about uncovering secrets. It was about survival. The knowledge that weapons were coming into the prison changed everything. Malik and I knew that if the shipment arrived, violence would explode in ways no one could control. The fragile balance we had been clinging to would shatter. We decided to warn the few guards we could trust. Finding them was not easy. Most were either too afraid or too involved. But after careful searching, we found Officer Daniels. He was known for being tough but fair, and he seemed genuinely disturbed by the rumors. We met him quietly during the evening shift. I handed him a copy of the documents we had collected, including the note about the weapons shipment. His eyes darkened as he read. "This is serious," he said. "If this gets out, the prison will be in chaos. But you need to be careful. If the wrong people find out you talked to me, it could mean trouble." I nodded. "We understand the risks, but we have to stop this." Daniels looked around nervously. "I will see what I can do, but we have little time." Over the next few days, the tension in the prison grew thicker. Rumors spread of lockdowns and increased security. Malik and I kept low, waiting for the shipment and hoping that Daniels' intervention would work. Then, one afternoon, a loud crash echoed through the yard. The shipment had arrived, but not as expected. The loud crash echoed through the prison yard like a thunderclap. Suddenly, guards shouted orders and inmates scrambled to see what was happening. Malik and I exchanged tense glances. The shipment had arrived, but something was wrong. We hurried toward the source of the noise near the loading dock. There we saw a group of inmates gathered around a broken crate. Inside were weapons, exactly as we feared nubs, makeshift clubs, and even a few small firearms smuggled in with terrifying precision. The guards moved quickly to secure the area, but the damage was done. The prison atmosphere shifted instantly. The fragile calm was shattered. Whispers turned to shouts, and fear mixed with excitement.
Ow!
Some men saw the weapons as a chance to change the balance of power. Others feared an all-out war was about to erupt. Malik pulled me aside. "We have to move fast. This is going to get ugly." I nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. I was in the middle of a storm I never wanted to be part of, yet I had no choice but to face it head-on. That night, the prison was restless. The weapons had been hidden away, but rumors spread of secret meetings and plans. Some inmates talked about rebellion, others whispered about survival. In my cell, I lay awake, thinking about the mysteries that had brought me here through robbery. The corruption, the broker, and now this dangerous shipment. Each thread was tangled, but one thing was clear. I had refused protective custody, not just to survive, but to stand for something bigger. The battle for the prison was just beginning. The next morning, the prison was buzzing with tension. Guards patrolled more aggressively, their eyes sharper than ever. Inmates kept to themselves, but the undercurrent of fear and suspicion was thick in the air. Malik and I knew that the weapons were a powder keg, waiting for a spark. We needed a plan. But the question was how to stop the inevitable chaos without becoming targets ourselves. I thought back to the day I refused protective custody. The choice had put me in the middle of this storm. But it had also given me a kind of strength I did not have before. I had to use it now. Malik suggested we reach out to Hector and Luis again. They had connections and a reputation that could help us keep the peace, at least temporarily. We met in the workshop, the only place where we could talk without prying eyes. "We need to get the word out," Hector said quietly. "If we let the weapons fuel a war, no one wins. Not the inmates and not the guards." Luis nodded. "Can try to negotiate with the gangs. The ones who want to fight, and the ones who want to stay out of it." It was risky, but it was the only chance. I volunteered to speak with the leaders. My role as someone who refused protective custody gave me a unique position. I was not tied to any faction completely, but I was still respected enough to be heard. Over the next days, I moved carefully, visiting the leaders in their cells and courtyards. Some were skeptical, others were angry.
Yes.
But slowly, I began to build a fragile truce. It was not peace, but it was enough to delay the explosion. In the back of my mind, I wondered if the broker was watching. Was he pleased? Or was this part of his plan? The mystery continued to grow. Negotiating peace in a place like this was like walking on a thin wire stretched over a deep abyss. Every word, every gesture, could mean the difference between calm and chaos. I met with the gang leaders one by one, sitting in dim corners where no one could overhear us. They listened, but with wary eyes, measuring my intentions. One of them, Big Rico, was the toughest. His reputation for violence was well known. When I told him about the fragile truce I was trying to build, he laughed bitterly. "You think words will stop what's coming? Weapons change everything, James." I looked him in the eye. "Maybe, but fighting will only make it worse. We have a chance to control this before it explodes." Big Rico's eyes narrowed. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I have nothing left to lose," I said honestly. "I refused protective custody to stand with you, not against you. We all want to survive." Slowly, others began to listen. Luis helped spread the message, reminding men that this was about survival, not power. Hector acted as a mediator, calming tempers when they flared. The truce held longer than I expected. It was fragile and uneasy, but it was there. Still, the presence of the broker loomed over everything. His control felt invisible but absolute. I wondered what his next move would be. Was he pushing us toward destruction or something else entirely? Then, one day, a new mystery unfolded. A fellow inmate, a quiet man named Samuel, came to me with a strange story. Samuel was a quiet man who kept to himself most of the time. He was not part of any gang or alliance, which made him easy to overlook. But when he approached me one afternoon in the yard, there was something urgent in his eyes. "James, I need to tell you something," he whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "It's about the broker." I motioned for him to find a quieter spot. We moved to a shadowed corner near the laundry area. Samuel took a deep breath and began. "I overheard something. Not from here, but from one of the guards. The broker is not just running things inside the prison. He has a network outside. People who send messages, arrange deals. But there is more. There is a code, hidden message that only a few understand." My heart quickened. This was new information, something deeper than anything we had uncovered before. "What kind of code?" I asked. Samuel shook his head. "I don't know yet, but it involves the shipments and the way things are moving. If we can crack it, maybe we can predict what the broker will do next." Malik joined us, his face grim. "We have to find that code. If the broker is planning more than we realize, we need to be ready." The mystery grew thicker, and so did the danger. But for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe the truth could set us free after all. Decoding a secret message inside a prison was no small task. Malik, Samuel, Luis, and I began watching for patterns in the shipments and the strange signals we heard about. We listened to conversations, watched guard movements, and tried to connect dots that seemed invisible to others. Days turned into nights filled with whispered theories and careful observation. Luis used his outside contacts to try and intercept messages sent to the broker's network. It was slow work, full of dead ends. But gradually we uncovered fragments of what seemed like a coded language, numbers, symbols, and words that repeated in suspicious ways. One evening, Samuel pointed to a series of numbers etched discreetly on a wall near the cafeteria. "Look at this. It matches some of the codes we found." Malik ran his finger over the marks and frowned. "Coordinates, dates, something important is hidden here." I realized that the broker was not just orchestrating chaos for profit. He was playing a dangerous game with plans we barely understood. The pressure was mounting. The weapons had changed the rules, and the arrival of coded messages meant there was much more to come. Our fragile truce hung by a thread as the prison held its breath. One night, as I lay on my bunk, a sudden noise woke me. Footsteps. Whispered voices. I peeked through the bars and saw a shadow slipping through the hall. Someone delivering a note to my cell. I opened it carefully. The message was short but chilling. "You are closer than you know. Trust no one." The mystery had wrapped tighter around me like a noose, but I was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. The note left me staring at the cold wall of my cell for a long time. Trust no one. The words echoed in my mind like a warning siren. In a place where alliances shifted like sand, that phrase was more than advice, it was survival. Malik found me the next morning, his face tight with concern. "You got a message?" I nodded, handing him the note. It feels like someone is watching, waiting. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. We have to be careful. The broker's reach is wider than we thought. And now, maybe someone inside our circle is not who they say they are. The idea hit me hard. Had someone betrayed us? Is there a mole feeding information to the broker? I glanced around the common area, noticing how even familiar faces seemed shadowed by suspicion. Luis and Samuel joined us later that day. We decided to tighten security around our small group and double-check everything. Every piece of information, every whisper was scrutinized. The tension built, but we pressed on. The more we learned, the clearer it became that the broker's plan involved more than just weapons or control. There was a secret transaction scheduled, something that could change the prison's future forever. One evening, Malik returned from a meeting with a grim expression. The transaction is happening tonight, somewhere inside the prison. We had to act fast. The mystery was no longer just about uncovering secrets. It was a race against time. That night, the prison seemed quieter than usual. Too quiet. It was the kind of silence that settles right before something breaks. Malik, Samuel, Luis, and I moved carefully through the shadows, staying out of sight as we approached the old utility corridor beneath cell block C. Samuel had overheard a guard mention the meeting location, a forgotten storage room near the furnace chambers. It was rarely used and well hidden from the cameras. If the broker planned to complete his secret transaction, this was the place. As we reached the hallway, we saw a faint glow under a doorway ahead. Voices murmured behind it. We crouched near the wall, listening closely. "The payment is here," said one voice. It was calm, cold. "Good," answered another. "No mistakes tonight. This deal secures the next 2 years." We could not see them, but the tone made it clear this was a high-level meeting. A's were not just smugglers or gang members. These were men with influence, both inside and out. Malik leaned close to me. "You have to get proof. We expose this, and everything changes." I nodded, then reached into my pocket and pulled out a small recorder we had taken from a guard. I pressed the button and held it near the door. Every word they said, we captured. After several minutes, the voices faded. The door opened. We ducked back into the darkness and watched as 3 men walked past. One was a senior guard. Another was a man in civilian clothes. The third, to my shock, was a prison administrator. The broker was not alone. He had powerful allies. The moment they passed us, we stayed frozen in place, barely breathing. Soon as they disappeared into the stairwell, Malik signaled for us to move. We slipped into the storage room and quickly scanned the space. Stacks of boxes lined the walls, some marked with shipping codes we had seen in the decoded messages. Luis grabbed one of the crates and forced it open. Inside were bundles of sealed envelopes, small hard drives, and even a few rolled-up documents stamped with government markings. I stared at them, stunned. "This is not just smuggling," Samuel whispered. "This is intelligence, blackmail, maybe even evidence of crimes outside the prison." We gathered what we could, stuffing the evidence into our hidden compartments. Every piece added weight to the mystery. The broker was orchestrating more than a power struggle. He was managing a criminal empire tied to officials beyond these walls. We returned to our cells unnoticed. The recorder with the voices of those men and the evidence from the crates gave us our clearest shot yet, but it also made us targets. If the broker found out we had this, there would be nowhere safe left in the prison. Later that night, I sat in my bunk, the recorder tucked under my mattress. My mind churned with questions. Who was the man in civilian clothes? What kind of leverage did the broker have over the administration? And most importantly, how far would they go to protect it? Just before lights out, a new note was slipped under my door. It was written in sharp handwriting. "You have what belongs to me. Return it, or you will burn with it." I held the note in my hand and read it again and again under the dim glow from the hallway light. The message was clear. The broker knew we had been in the storage room. He knew we had the evidence. Now he wanted it back. The fear hit me like a cold wind through the bars. It's not just for me, but for Malik, Luis, Samuel, and even the few guards who had dared to help us. The game we were playing had turned deadly. I waited until morning before meeting with the others. We gathered in the laundry room, our usual spot when we needed privacy. Malik laid the note on the table. He knows. We need a plan. Fast. Samuel kept his voice low. We cannot just hand it over. This is the only leverage we have. Luis nodded. But if we try to go public, they will kill us before we can even open our mouths. We went back and forth for hours. Then Malik said something that silenced us all. What if we expose him from the inside? We stared at him. He explained. There is a visiting panel in the admin wing. It is monitored by outside agencies. If we can get in there with this evidence and trigger a secure call, we can send everything out before they even realize what is happening. It was risky. We would need help from someone inside. Someone who could sneak us into the administrative offices. Someone willing to betray the broker. We all looked at each other. There's only one person who might have that kind of access and enough desperation to make a move. Officer Daniels. Finding Officer Daniels was not difficult. Guilt had been wearing him down like rust on metal ever since he warned us about the shipment. He was not part of the broker's core circle, but he knew more than he let on. We found him on patrol near the infirmary and asked for a private word. He led us into the supply closet. I shut the door behind us, locking it with a broom handle wedged against the inside latch. We have one shot at stopping this, I told him. We need access to the administrative wing, the visiting panel, a secure line. Daniels looked pale. His voice came out tight. You are insane. That place is crawling with eyes. If they catch you in there, they will kill us either way, Malik interrupted. No, they will. You have seen what they are capable of. Daniels ran his hand over his face. He looked like a man caught between survival and conscience. Finally, he nodded. I can get you in, but only for 10 minutes. No alarms. No mistakes. That night, we prepared everything. The hard drives were wrapped in cloth and strapped to my leg under my pants. Luis created a distraction in the kitchen to delay one of the security teams. Malik covered our movement by altering the shift logs. Samuel stayed back to keep an eye out and warn us if anything changed. Daniels met us by the service stairwell just after lockdown. The halls were empty. He opened the metal door and pointed up. Room to see, make it quick. We slipped through, our hearts pounding with every step toward the truth. Room to see was dim, quiet, and cold. A single fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting a pale glow over the metal desk and the wall-mounted terminal. This was it, the secure line. If we could upload the data and trigger the emergency contact, someone on the outside would see everything. Malik locked the door behind us while I powered on the terminal. It booted slowly, each second dragging like an eternity. When the screen finally lit up, it asked for a passcode. Louis stepped forward. I can guess it. I have seen the admin use it before. He typed carefully. On the third try, the screen unlocked. We connected the first hard drive. Dozens of files appeared, filled with evidence of corruption, deals, and surveillance logs. Luis navigated the interface, looking for the emergency transmission menu. There it is, he said. Just need to copy the files and hit send. As the bar crawled across the screen, we heard footsteps. Not just one pair. Several. My breath caught. Malik pressed his ear to the door. Guards. 4 of them, moving fast. Luis whispered. Almost done. 15 more seconds. The footsteps grew louder. A voice shouted, check that room. Malik held the door as I watched the loading bar reach 90%. Then 95. Then 100. Luis hit send. The screen flashed green. Data transmitted successfully. We grabbed the drives and slipped out the back door. Just as the main hallway filled with flashlights and shouting, we ran down the stairs and disappeared into the darkness. The evidence was gone. Out of our hands. Out of the prison. But that only made us more dangerous to the broker. The days that followed were the longest I had ever lived through. We went back to our routines like nothing had happened, but every sound made us flinch. Every glance from a guard felt like the beginning of something terrible. We waited for the hammer to fall, but it did not. Not yet. The broker had gone silent. That scared me more than any direct threat. He was not the kind of man to let something like this go unanswered. If we had wounded him, he was waiting for the perfect time to strike back. Samuel kept listening. Malik watched the guards. Luis stayed in the workshop, pretending to build shelves while hiding the remaining hard drive under the floorboards. I spent most of my time in the yard, watching and waiting. Then something unexpected happened. A new warden arrived. Warden Pierce was not from this state. He came in quietly. No press, no announcement. But within 2 days, half the old staff had been reassigned. One of them was the administrator we saw in the secret meeting. I knew immediately that someone had seen the files.
Oh.
Our message had reached the outside. Daniels met me near the chapel. He looked more alert, less afraid. "I do not know what you did," he said, "but it is working. They're digging into everything. Files are being pulled. External review teams are scheduled for next week." It should have felt like victory, but it did not. Not yet, because we had still not found the broker. And now he had gone completely underground. The broker's silence was not peace. It was the pressure before the quake. Every man in our circle felt it. Samuel said he dreamed of someone watching him through the walls. Malik checked the yard exits twice before sitting down. Luis kept a sharpened piece of metal on him at all times, hidden in his boot. I tried to stay calm, but the truth was clawing at the back of my mind. We had exposed part of the web, but not the spider. The broker was still here, still watching, still planning. It became clear the day Samuel disappeared. It happened during a routine transfer to the infirmary. He had complained about a stomach issue. Guard escorted him down the south wing. Cameras were on. Protocol was followed. Then he was gone. No one saw him again. Warden Pierce ordered a full search, but nothing turned up. The hallway footage between checkpoints had been erased, so the guard assigned to him claimed he never arrived. We knew the truth. The broker had struck back. Not loud, not messy, just gone. Duh. It shook us hard. Luis refused to leave the workshop. Bleak stopped sleeping. I sat on my bunk for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering when my turn would come. That night, another note appeared under my door. He should have kept quiet. You should too. But this time I did not panic. It did not crumble. I burned the note in the toilet, flushed the ashes, and sat down to write a letter. Not just to the review board, but to someone I had not written to in years. My sister. Because if I was going to survive this, I needed to remember why I chose this path in the first place. Her name was Elise. We had not spoken in almost 10 years. Not since the trial. Not since I stood in that courtroom and told the truth that shattered our entire family. Elise had begged me not to testify. Not because she did not believe me, but because she was afraid. Afraid of what would happen to me. Afraid of what our cousins and uncles would do. She was right to be afraid. They were gang-connected, blood deep in the business. I was just the kid who worked at a tire shop and kept my head down. But when I saw what they did to that boy behind the warehouse, I could not stay quiet. I testified, and I was the only one who did. My uncles went to prison. Some of the crew took plea deals. I thought I would be safe. I was not. They came for me 3 months later. Lonely, they missed and hit a stranger in the parking lot instead. That got me arrested. Attempted manslaughter. And even though it was self-defense, I took a plea to avoid a longer sentence. 15 years. That was the beginning. Now, in this cell 10 years later, I finally wrote to Elise. I told her what I had done inside these walls. About the gangs. About the corruption. About Samuel. Yes. I did not ask for forgiveness. I just wanted her to know that I had not given up. That I still believed in truth. Even when it hurt. Even when it cost everything. I sealed the letter and gave it to Daniels. They promised to get it out. I did not know if she would read it. Writing it reminded me that I was not just fighting to survive. I was fighting to become the man I was supposed to be. Even if that meant standing alone. Warden Pierce was different from the others. He walked the yard alone, spoke to inmates without backup, and paid attention to small things. He had not earned our trust yet, but he had earned our curiosity. When he called me into his office, I expected either a warning or a setup. Instead, he closed the door, sat across from me, and slid a folder across the desk. "You sent this out," he said. "You and your people." I nodded. No point in lying. He opened the folder and pulled out a sheet of paper. We confirmed everything. Corrupt staff, smuggling operations. The administrator's in federal custody, but the broker is still inside, still protected. He's buried himself so deep we cannot find him, his eyes fixed on mine, but you can. I leaned back in the chair, silent for a moment. "And if I help you, what then?" Pierce answered, without hesitation. "But then we start pulling every piece of him out of this prison, one brick at a time." It was the most honest offer I had heard in 10 years. I left his office with a mission, not a request, not a survival plan, a real mission. Back in the yard, I found Malik and Luis by the fence. I told them everything. What Pierce had said, we had the chance to do. "We finished this," I said, "for Samuel, for every inmate they used." For everyone who thought we were just animals in cages, Malik nodded slowly, and we find the broker, and we end it, for good. That night, we started digging through the shadows of the prison once more. But this time, we were not just surviving. We were hunting. The prison was a maze of secrets, but we had new eyes now. Warden Pierce gave us access to forgotten records and old surveillance tapes. Malik used his connections with other inmates to gather whispers. Luis and Samuel pieced together patterns from movement logs and contraband reports. Piece by piece, the broker's network began to unravel. One night, Luis came running to our cell block, his face pale. "I found something," he gasped. "A hidden room behind the kitchen storage, not on any map. Cameras show men moving in and out, but the feeds have gaps." We moved quickly. Malik and I coordinated a small team to explore the room during the next kitchen shift change. The walls were lined with crates and stacks of cash. A small office with a locked safe sat in the corner. Inside were documents linking the broker to people even higher up than we imagined. Names of politicians, businessmen, and law enforcement officials. The prison was just a hub for a much larger operation. But there was something else. A ledger with a name that chilled me. Elise. My sister's name. Why was she connected to the broker? Was she in danger? Was she part of it? Questions swirled, but one thing was clear. The mystery was far from over. I could barely sleep that night. Elise's name echoed in my mind like a ghost I could not shake. Was she caught in something I did not understand? Was she a victim, or worse, a participant? The thought twisted my gut. The next morning, I told Malik and Luis what I had found. They looked at me with a mix of shock and resolve. "We need to know more," Malik said. "If she is involved, we have to find out why." Luis nodded. "But we cannot let this distract us. The broker is still out there and he will not stop." We agreed to split our efforts. Malik and I would dig into the connection with Elise. Luis and Samuel would keep watching the broker's remaining operations. I started by asking Daniels if he could get me any background on Elise from the prison's outside contacts. It took days, but eventually, a report came through. She was working as an administrative assistant for a local politician. Someone rumored to have ties to organized crime, but never proven. I felt sick. The lines between my past and present blurred. The sister I loved might be trapped in the same web of corruption we were fighting. That night, I made a decision. When this was over, I would find her. I would get answers. If she needed help, I would be there. But first, I had to survive the broker. Days turned into weeks, and the prison atmosphere grew thicker with tension. The broker's grip was weakening, but he still had loyal men ready to strike at a moment's notice. Malik, Luis, Samuel, and I moved cautiously, always watching, always listening. One evening, during the last hour of the yard time, Malik pulled me aside. "I heard something strange," he said quietly. "There is talk about a shipment coming in tomorrow night. Bigger than anything before," Luis added. "If we can catch that, we might finally cut off the broker's supply line." Samuel nodded. "We'd have to be ready." We spent the night planning. Daniels promised to help us get to the loading dock. It was heavily guarded, but with his access, we could slip in unnoticed. The next night, cloaked by darkness, we moved through service tunnels. The air was thick with the smell of oil and rust. Voices echoed ahead. "We have the shipment," said one voice. "Make sure it reaches the broker personally." Malik, Luis, and I exchanged looks. This was it. Suddenly, the lights flickered on. Shouts filled the air. "Freeze, hands where we can see them." We'd been betrayed. The harsh floodlights blinded us as guards swarmed at the loading dock. Daniels was nowhere to be seen. My heart pounded. This had to be the broker's men setting a trap. Malik whispered, "Split up, find cover." We scattered among crates and machinery, kept the hard drives close, and slipped behind a stack of barrels. The guards moved methodically, but I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure, man in a dark coat watching from the shadows. The broker himself. My blood ran cold. He was more dangerous than ever, calm even with his empire crumbling. I wanted to move, to run, but my legs refused. Suddenly, a shout broke the tension. Daniels appeared, raising his hands. "Stop, let them go." The guards hesitated. Daniels stepped forward, speaking fast. "There is enough evidence here to bring this whole operation down. We want a deal, protection. We want to testify." The broker's face twisted with rage, but he held his ground. The guards lowered their weapons, confusion rippling through the group. In that moment, the truth came crashing down. The broker was finished. The guards slowly lowered their weapons, the tension in the air shifting from hostility to disbelief. The broker's cold eyes flickered with anger, but the walls were closing in around him. Daniels took a step forward and spoke firmly. "This ends tonight. The evidence is with outside authorities. The prison cannot protect you anymore." The broker's face twisted in a sneer, but even his voice betrayed a hint of defeat. "You think this changes anything? You are nothing but pawns." But the confident edge was gone. In that moment, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. The courtyard erupted with the sound of boots and radios as federal agents stormed the gates. Their arrival was swift and precise. It was clear they had been waiting for this moment, armed with warrants and backed by evidence we had helped bring forward. Men who once looked invincible were now cuffed and led away in silence. The broker himself was hauled into custody, his empire shattered by the bravery of those who refused to stay silent. I stood there with Malik, Luis, and Samuel, breathless and stunned. This was more than survival. It was justice. Later, in the quiet of my cell, I thought about Elise. The tangled web her name had brought up still gnawed at me. Now that the broker was gone, maybe I could find her. Maybe I could understand what had happened. Maybe this time, I could save my family as well. For the first time since I arrived, hope felt real. The fight was not over, but the darkness had been pierced, and I was still standing. The days that followed felt surreal. Prison was quieter, but the change was real. Warden Pierce brought in new protocols, and the heavy shadows that once hung over the yard began to lift. Malik, Luis, and Samuel talked more about the future than the past. We even found moments to laugh again. But my mind was elsewhere, Elise. I had a letter waiting for me from her, delivered through a trusted contact Daniels arranged. Her words were cautious but honest. She explained how tangled she had been, how she had tried to escape the same darkness, but had been pulled in deeper than she wanted. She asked for my help, not just as a brother, but as a man who never stopped believing in truth. I promised her I would be there once I was free. Freedom was still a long way off. The prison had taken years of my life, but it had also given me something unexpected, a purpose. I was no longer just a witness. I was a fighter, for justice, for family, for the chance to live without fear. I lay on my bunk that night. I thought about everything I had been through, the betrayal, the fear, the mystery that had haunted every step, the truth that had finally set me free. I did not choose this path, but I refused to run from it, because sometimes the greatest courage comes not from strength, but from standing tall when the world wants you to fall. And that was how I lived, not just as an inmate, but as a man who refused to be broken.